So one night, this girl is in bed, and a tall, shadowy man comes into her bedroom. And somehow, he doesn't have a face, and he starts talking to her telepathically, and he says he's been following her. Now her name's Morgan, she's almost 12 and she lives a pretty normal life. But one day, one of her best friends, this girl, Anissa, she starts telling Morgan stories about this creepy mythical man she's been reading about online. A man they call Slenderman. And she tells her about how Slenderman likes to abduct people, especially kids. And Morgan loves these stories and the lore, and she becomes obsessed with Slenderman. Like he's scary, but at the same time, he's strangely kind of like a hero to her. Now eventually, one day, Morgan starts hearing messages in her head, and they're from Slenderman himself. He's reaching out to her and communicating with her telepathically, and he says he's been following her and watching her. And the more he comes to Morgan and talks to her, the more obsessed with Slenderman she becomes. Now allegedly, as the lore goes, once Slenderman singles you out, you have to commit an act of violence against someone on his behalf. You basically have to unalive someone. If you don't, you are yourself in danger of being unalived. And Morgan and her friend Anissa, they don't want to be unalived by Slenderman, so they come up with a plan. They decide they're gonna go through with it and unalive someone and then become Slenderman's minions. And then they'll go live with him in his mansion where he lives in the forest, and there is where they'll become almost like little mini Slendermen and they'll be protected from his wrath. But in order for this plan to work, they first need to find someone to unalive. And they have the perfect person to sacrifice. Their other best friend, this girl, who they call Bella. Now Bella's also 12, she's a good kid, and she's not into this whole Slenderman thing, and poor Bella has no idea what's coming. So a few months go by and Morgan and Anissa, they put their plan into motion. They invite Bella to a sleepover to celebrate Morgan's 12th birthday. And Bella, she's super excited to go. Because when you're 12, those birthday sleepovers are everything. And so the three girls, they have the sleepover and they have a great night. They go roller skating, they watch a movie, they mess around on the internet. Bella brings along her American Girl doll because that's how young they are. They still play with dolls. And in the morning, they eat donuts for breakfast and they play dress up. They're having a blast. Until after breakfast, Morgan and Anissa, they invite Bella to come to the park with them to play. On their way out, Morgan secretly grabs a steak knife from the kitchen and she hides it in her jacket. So they all three go over to the park and they eventually head over to the wooded area to play hide and seek. Now the plan is they're gonna unalive Bella, sacrificing her to Slenderman, and then afterwards hike all the way over to his forest mansion. Now the mansion is supposed to be hidden in Nicolet National Forest, which is about 300 miles away from them. So this is not a very well thought out plan. Regardless, they're playing this game of hide and seek, and Bella, she's just being her normal self. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, boom, Morgan tackles her, taking them both to the ground. And she sits on Bella's legs and she holds her down so she can't get up. And then Morgan takes the kitchen knife out and she starts sticking Bella. And Morgan ends up stabbing her 19 times. And when she's done, Morgan gets up and Bella is just laying there, bleeding all over the place. And then Morgan and Anissa leave, leaving Bella there to die. Then the two girls hike to a nearby Walmart and they wash up in the bathroom, and from there they start their hike to the forest where Slenderman's mansion is. Meanwhile, Bella is still laying on the ground, dying, and she's in pain and she can't breathe. But then she somehow finds the strength to stand up, and she stumbles from tree to tree as she makes her way to the nearest road. And luckily, a cyclist just happens to be biking past, and he sees Bella laying there in the grass bleeding, and he's like, oh shit, and he immediately calls 911. And then EMTs come and they rush her to the hospital, and before she's out, she's able to tell police exactly what happened and who did this to her. So then police go on a manhunt looking for Morgan and Anissa. And about 5 hours later, police finally find them, wandering around near the woods, and they don't resist and they don't deny stabbing Bella. In fact, they're very nonchalant about the whole thing. So police arrest them. Here's Morgan's mugshot, here's Anissa's, and they're both charged with attempted homicide, and they both go to trial. And after a psychiatric evaluation, each of them is found to have suffered from delusions, with Morgan actually being diagnosed as schizophrenic, which explains why she thought Slenderman was communicating with her. Now, I don't know if she thought he actually showed up in her bedroom. That's actually my interpretation of it. But she said she definitely believed he was following her and communicating with her. So anyway, Morgan's sentenced to 40 years in a mental institution, while Anissa is sentenced to 25 years in a mental institution. Meanwhile, Bella actually survives and eventually makes a full recovery. Good for her. Shout out to Wisconsin.